Cattle mutilation expert Linda Howe arrived at the ranch in Farnham, Nebraska to begin the investigation of the unusual death of Larry Jurgen's cow. The location was remote and hard to access, but once there, Howe approached slowly, making preliminary observations through the lens of her camera.
I am on a north-south axis with this animal. One of the interesting things is, this is a 360-degree, surrounded by hills. Whatever happened in here, it could operate without anybody seeing.
She was looking for the classic indications of an authentic mutilation. As she stepped around fairly fresh cow dung, indicating the herd had been there a few days ago, she noted the far distance being maintained by other cattle at the time. Further documentation was made of the area and the orientation of the body. The cow lay dead for nearly a week. Then she went in for a closer look.
The ears are intact, so this one is one of the few in which the ear is not taken. You can tell even now with the collapse of the body in death that this was a very large, healthy animal, and she had given birth to a calf that had grown to 400 pounds, so she was a very healthy animal.
Despite days of decay and maggot infestation, there were no body parts or organs strewn about in a manner typically found when predators or scavengers strike. The remote settings, surgical precision, absence of evidence, no claims of responsibility, and the huge geographic area covered over decades have led some researchers to extraordinary conclusions.
Well, some people do make the connection that this is an extraterrestrial event, and really there's no evidence one way or the other. But then there's no evidence that humans are involved in this either. However, they do see UFOs in the area, and leads a lot of us to come to conclusions that this could possibly be aliens involved.
Does our government have these craft? And if they have the craft, do they have hard proof that that which is in the craft is involved with the animal mutilations?
If they exist, UFOs could account for the rumblings heard and the light seen in the sky. Or even the cattle mutilations.
By 1989, I had become personally convinced that extraterrestrial biological entities or something from outer space being involved, this was in fact the story.
A story that tells of spaceships that may have the technology to levitate cows up to the craft, perform the surgical excisions, and then let them plummet to the earth.
And when you find that the cow had dropped on its muscles, it's consistent with people who said they've seen animals drop from glowing discs in the sky to the ground.
Would aliens possess the technology capable of performing bloodless surgery with precision, a process that humans would have trouble carrying out?
Most of the cases that we find, the cause of death is exsanguination, complete loss of blood within the body. We don't have the surgical equipment that it takes to do that kind of thing. The kind of vacuum that would require to do that is just not available, even in hospitals, let alone in the field.
But even if extraterrestrials had the ability to conduct this long-term killing spree, is there a motivation?
Some people say that the ET's motivation behind this is genetics, that they're involved in our DNA. And cattle DNA is very similar to humans.
This suggests that aliens are harvesting bovine biology as part of a mission that serves some greater galactic purpose. One that is well beyond human understanding and is vital to alien survival.
They can use that genetic manipulation to fill in the, it's not quite Jurassic Park, where you're skipping a few genetic codes to get to the dinosaurs from the amphibians, as they did in that film. But they do have unbelievable high technology when it comes to genetic mentality. So they can use cattle for their research and sometimes to fill in the gaps that they don't have enough human DNA for.
Also that human blood is transferable with cattle blood in emergencies. So there's enough similarity between us and the bovine to make me believe that there's some sort of research being done on our DNA.
The idea of aliens collecting blood from cows in order to extract DNA for some unfathomable genetic research easily attracts skeptics.
That extraterrestrials are doing animal mutilations is the least likely explanation.
Within veterinary circles, such theories may sound a bit too alien to be scientifically grounded.
I'm not aware of that at all, that there's that much similarity between human and bovine blood. A human has 46 chromosomes, a cow has 60 chromosomes, so there's a difference right there. Are they that closely related? I don't think so, but I don't know.
UFO believers aside, there are many who don't look that far for answers. They contend these mysterious mutilation occurrences are simply the work of pranksters or some dark cult ritual.
I have seen instances where animals were mutilated or maimed, but in all those instances, it was corroborated with law enforcement effort. People that it was actually the act of a mentally ill person. But otherwise, I've never seen an unexplained mutilation.
We've been 30 years, 40 years now of these abductions, and nobody's ever seen a human involved in this. There's never been a farmer come across somebody in the middle of some sort of a satanic ritual or something.
For the ranchers in the western prairie states, cattle mutilations are a loss of inventory and a loss of revenue. And they want some answers. By 1975, cattle mutilation mysteries were so prolific, Colorado Senator Floyd Haskell asked the U.S. government for help. In a request dated August 29, 1975, Haskell wrote, "I'm asking that the Federal Bureau of Investigation enter the case. Although the Colorado Bureau of Investigation has been investigating the incidents, the lack of central unified direction has frustrated the investigation."
The Colorado Bureau of Investigation got involved in this in the late 70s because there were so many complaints from farmers that they were losing their cattle. Now, this is their livelihood, and they're losing valuable cattle every day.
Haskell's letter warned, "It now appears that ranchers are arming themselves to protect their livestock and their families. Clearly, something must be done before somebody gets hurt."
They didn't really have an idea what was going on.
Before the whole animal mutilation craze happened, ranchers were just going out and finding dead animals and scratching their heads and saying, I guess old Betsy just keeled over and the predators got her.
In his reply to Senator Haskell, FBI Director Clarence Kelly wrote, "I regret to inform you that these actions do not constitute a violation of federal law, coming within the FBI's investigative jurisdiction." March 14, 1979, New Mexico Senator Harrison Schmitt, a former Apollo astronaut, called for a federal investigation citing the mutilation phenomena crossed state lines.
I think they really thought at one point that it could have alien involvement. They really, at the final conclusion of it all, they just really came to the point where they thought that it needed more investigation.
This led to the investigation headed by Kenneth Rommel, who retired from the FBI in May 1979, and shortly afterwards assumed the role of Director of Investigations for Operation Animal Mutilation for the state of New Mexico.
He looked at many cases, and he was fairly open-minded with his investigation from the report that I've read.
Rommel had hundreds of historical and current cases to investigate.
Somehow I think his opinion what happened changed throughout his tenure with the New Mexico government.
Cattle mutilation researcher Linda Howe had a first-hand experience with Rommel.
So we get into the office of Kenneth Rommel, and I'm there to do an interview as a reporter with an investigator working for the state of New Mexico. And we sit down and we're getting ready, and first thing he says to me, you know, I'm going to prove that this is nothing but predator.
After 1 year of research, Rommel submitted his final report. It stated, after laboriously weighing and analyzing the evidence, I have come to the conclusion that the vast majority of mutilations are caused by predators and scavengers.
All of the news media were doing stories about what is this mystery that is stalking the prairie.
The subject transitioned from a rural myth to front-page headlines. News reports elevated the phrase cattle mutilation into the lexicon for strange, unexplained, and paranormal research. Cattle mutilations, like most UFO-related phenomena, have lurked in the shadows of U.S. government conspiracies since the days of the Roswell incident.
It's hard to imagine why the United States government, for any reason, would go out and mutilate cattle. I cannot imagine why. And if they did so, why they would do so in a way that seems to mimic the work of predators.
The government theory doesn't make sense because the head of the Colorado Bureau of Investigation had said to me, if the CIA, NSA, DIA, FBI, if they were all involved in animal mutilations for some covert government project, they just go out and buy what they needed. They just take them to one of the military bases. They would do whatever they're going to do, and no one would know.
What's your take on this deal? Is it just some wacko doing wild stuff, or what?
It'd have to be a wacko that had access to the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere and every country you can think of, because it's worldwide. It's been going on since at least the 50s. And nobody has ever once been arrested and arraigned on an animal mutilation charge, not anywhere in the world.
Her interviews with these ranchers reveal there have been reports of some local residents hearing strange noises and seeing lights in the sky on the nights in question.
I was in bed, and I was asleep and startled out of a deep sleep
By
a loud noise. It sounded like an airplane or a helicopter or something going over the house. It almost scared me enough to think that it was going to run into the house.
And how long do you think you laid listening to it?
It was probably 30 to 40 seconds. It was almost like a helicopter, but I wouldn't say it was totally like one. It was just real loud, like a loud airplane, or... I mean, I'm right next to the road where there's trucks and vehicles going up and down the road, and it didn't sound like any of those.
Strange, though.
It's strange. Scary.
Stories of the unidentified flying object were recorded many miles away from the ranches where the mutilated cattle lie.
That it sounded like an aircraft coming in low, because it was a loud rumbly sound, and it lasted for a while. And then he came in about that time, and I asked him what that was, and he went outside.
And Dan, what did you see when you went out?
Didn't see it, but I did see a white light going that way, and a low flying, had to be an airplane.
So the only
Didn't see an airplane.
Yeah, you didn't see an airplane, so the only thing you were seeing was that white light.
That's right.
With the field investigation complete, the samples are immediately sent to laboratories in Michigan and Pennsylvania for forensic analysis.
This is magnetic drag material from the Farnham. And the main thing here is you'll see that the tiny, tiny magnetite and hematite particles are extremely small, from 5 to 20 microns in diameter, which is very small. Some cases we get up 30 or 40 microns, but this particular sample is just these tiny particles strewn all over the soil.
So we do have magnetite from the mutilation site at Farnham.
Yes, yeah.
Magnetite can be found in the meteoric dust floating in space. Dr. Levengood suggests that it can get mixed into plasma energy, like the aurora borealis, commonly known as the Northern Lights.
This occurs way up in the ionosphere, about 60 to 100 miles above the Earth. These are self-organized energies that form what we call plasma vortices.
These atmospheric anomalies can swirl around so quickly that, like a tornado, they can spin to Earth and pull the magnetite with it. This spiral of energy may explain how the increased density of magnetite gets on the ground.
We're not talking about an energy that produces the bovine excision. We're talking about a number of interacting energies, what we call in science boundary conditions.
Linda Howe's explanation is that extraterrestrial technology targets these plasma energies at cattle.
And what we're looking at in this microscope, in a way, is kind of like the trail, the connection between that energy in the upper atmosphere that has come down and done something to this grass and to this soil. The magnetite is like proof of some unusual interaction.
It's a strong indication, yes.
Dr. Levengood also analyzed the grass samples and calculated subtle changes in the growth patterns caused by undetermined energies.
In Farnham, what you have found, the red and the blue, is that some energy is destructive and some energy is actually accelerating growth?
That's correct, yeah. And the neat part of it is, on this method, what we can do is we know that the way this energy changes with time in the grass follows a very precise mathematical function. So we can apply that function and see if this is actually metabolizing normally or not.
Dr. Levengood's analysis indicated Linda's grass samples were taken in a circular pattern around the cow.
This one is the one taken at the west end, and it follows it, but notice how the slope, it's almost flat. But of the animal, but it still follows that, it's still metabolizing grass. Right. And this is the one taken showing the very high energy input. And you can see the difference in the slope of those two.
And this is the one that was north or northwest.
That was the one that had the accelerated growth.
And when your data, you found that there was a direction and a change in the energy before you've even seen these photos.
Yeah, now that I don't.
Even though Dr. Levengood had not seen these images before, his findings were consistent with the photographs from the Farnham site.
That's where the energy was destructive.
That's right.
And the graph is related to energy out here.
Yeah, it'd be over in here somewhere.
Suggesting that something came in from the northwest.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Unbeknownst to Dr. Levengood, this is a significant conclusion because the witnesses to the strange lights and rumbling sounds also describe the direction of flight from the northwest. This hide sample removed from Larry Jurgen's mutilated cow featured 2 small holes that Hal believes indicate surgical access to the cow's heart area. The specimen was examined by the Chief of Pathology of Large Animals at the University of Pennsylvania's Animal Diagnostic Laboratory.
He wrote a report as honestly as he could. And what is so interesting, talking with him personally and reading the hard text of his report, he cannot rule out thermal influence at that hole, cannot rule it out.
I've been a pathologist for 27 years. I have not posted a cow where I felt there was an unusual circumstance of why the tongue or the udder or the rectum was removed that was not explainable by predators.
Regardless of the outcome of the laboratory testing, this level of forensic investigation underscores the mysterious circumstances surrounding cattle mutilations and a question of UFO intervention.
Our government still stands by the Rommel report from 1979 that these abduction cases are nothing more than humans being involved or predators being involved. Aliens have nothing to do with it, and the government has nothing to do with it.
There is really no evidence that extraterrestrials of any kind are involved with animal mutilation. No evidence, no good evidence.
In the final analysis, no witness admits to seeing the cow being mutilated. There has been no claim of responsibility from cults, pranksters, or aliens. And there is no hard proof of secret government operations or UFOs. Could physical evidence of implants exist inside the human body? UFO hunter Dr. Roger Lear takes the leap from the psychological world and studies the physical objects being extracted from the body.
I am a UFO hunter, and my job is to pursue research in this very tiny slice of a very strange phenomena. I've been a practicing podiatric surgeon for 41 years. I have performed research in a number of medical fields, and now I've applied my skills and science to the alien abduction physical evidence phenomena. And one of the prime examples of this is the Tim Cullen story.
May 30th, 1978. Tim Cullen and his wife Janet were driving north near Highway 59 in Colorado when they encountered what they believed was a UFO. Although they only recall staying at the scene for a few minutes, the Cullens arrived home an hour later than expected. 20 years later, a routine X-ray revealed an unexplained piece of metal in Tim's arm. Cullen traced it back to that spring night in 1978.
First contact was just telling me who he was and that he thought he might be associated with the abduction phenomena and that he had a metallic object in his arm. So we had him send the X-rays, and we looked, and certainly there was a foreign body there, which appeared to be metallic.
What you are seeing is the actual surgery which took place on February 5th, 2000.
You get a hold of it?
Dr. Lear supervised the procedure to remove the foreign object from Tim Cullen's arm. Although there was no original entry scar, a 6mm metallic object was found under the skin.
Once the object was removed, we find two very surprising things. One is that there's absolutely no inflammatory response by the body to the object, which is quote unquote impossible. And number two, we find that there's a large number of nerve cells there that really don't belong in that particular area. And these nerve cells are called proprioceptors.
Proprioceptors are an active living cluster of nerve endings. They're normally located in the hands and feet and respond to touch, temperature, and pressure. According to Dr. Lear, there is no medical explanation for them to be connected to a foreign piece of metal in the human body.
When we look at what happens in the body after the object goes in, the body does not like foreign things inside, so it reacts to it. Now, if it's, let's say, lead from a pencil or something like that, we get an immediate inflammatory reaction. But when we look at these things, there's nothing. Zip, zero. So just from that alone, you can say these are drastically different than any kind of typical foreign body that we get inside. I believe that these nerve cells are sort of the plug where this thing is plugged in at, and it's using neural energy from the body to operate. On one case, not Tim's, but on another case, we fortunately had a piece of equipment which was a radio frequency detector, and we actually detected 2 oscillating frequencies that were being emitted from the object. When they are removed, they don't do anything. So obviously, plugging them in somewhere into the body gives them some kind of energy that makes them do whatever it is they do.
Dr. Lear has supervised more than 10 of these operations. Each surgery has produced strange foreign objects from the body, all of which can be found safely locked in his personal archive. The evidence collected by Dr. Lear seems to defy scientific logic.
We find that these objects contain metals which are not from this earth. The abundant amount of physical evidence available leads me to believe that this planet is being visited by intelligences from somewhere else. That is why I'm a UFO hunter.
Ultimately, validating the hard evidence accumulated by UFO hunters is just as important as recovering artifacts. Whether the substantiation comes from science, metaphysics, documentation, or imagery, UFO hunters will not risk their credibility by presenting false data. Since many UFO sightings are allegedly caught on film and video, attempts to verify or validate the images comes down to researchers like naval optical physicist Dr. Bruce Maccabee.
I'm a UFO hunter, and my job is to separate the wheat from the chaff. For example, in the photographic cases, to be able to separate the cases which are mistakes or outright hoaxes from the cases which can't be explained.
Dr. Maccabee has authored 36 technical articles and more than 100 UFO research papers over the last 2.5 decades.
I've known Bruce for over 30 years. I find that he is persistent, he is consistent, he is scientific, and he doesn't let opinions come in so much as science. In my opinion, Dr. Bruce Maccabee is indeed a true UFO hunter.
Dr. Maccabee uses computer analysis systems to actually feed in and analyze each frame of a video, for instance, or to feed in a photograph. As a result, he has done investigations that stand the test of time.
I have done not only photographic research, but also historical research into the subject of UFOs.
Dr. Maccabee is convinced that photos alone can't tell the entire story. He believes that the U.S. government is withholding vital information.
I was one of the first people to try beating down the doors of the government by getting information out about the FBI.
J. Edgar Hoover himself says it is not now, nor was it ever was, the role of the FBI to be involved in UFO investigations. Dr. Bruce Maccabee filed a Freedom of Information Act request. This is back in the 70s. Got 1,600 pages of material.
When I got it and read through the documents, I could see that there was information in the FBI file that was nowhere else, including comments by Air Force people that were stored in the FBI file that you can't find in the Air Force file.
UFO hunter Nick Redfern sifts through thousands of government documents from around the world to seek hidden information about these UFO claims.
My background is largely looking at things from an official level, trying to determine what has been learned about the subject, what has been uncovered by, for example, the British military, the British Royal Air Force, the Ministry of Defence, and over here, the Central Intelligence Agency, FBI, National Security Agency. What drives me to investigate UFOs is Basically, I think that at an official restricted level, there are people who know the truth about this particular subject. And I feel that if something so important and potentially mind-blowing and life-changing as visitors from another world actually coming here, I think that all of us have a right to know this. Based on my research, I'm convinced that UFOs are real, they're coming from somewhere else, and they're visiting us. And that's why I became a UFO researcher.